Good evening. I'll call the meeting to order at this time. I will ask Mayor Pro Tem Scott if he will give the invitation. If you will please rise for the invitation and please remain standing for the pledge of allegiance.
Let us pray. Heavenly Father, Lord, we come to you tonight to do business for the community which we live, we serve, and we're so proud of. Father, we pray that you help each of us with make decisions that benefit the community as a whole, Lord, and make it better for the future. Father, we lift up those that are sick, ill, and injured in the community, Lord, that are not able to be here, Lord, or the ones that are ill, hospital, and other places, that you will bless them and keep them safe in your watch. Lord, a special prayer, Lord, for our children, your graduation schools, and out for the summer. Just pray that you'll be with them and help them have a prosperous career ahead of those that are looking for that. And those younger ones, Lord, just keep them safe and over your watch throughout this time. We ask all this in Christ's name. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Councilman Ashley will not be able to make it this evening. You do have the agenda in front of you. Do you have any corrections or additions to the agenda?
Mayor, for the sake of time, could we move business items 4 and 5 to consent agenda?
Items 4 and 5, which is the consideration approval to allow donate sick leave for 2 employees. Any issues with that, Mr.?
No, sir.
Okay. Anything else? Was a motion, is that correct, Mayor Pro Tem? I have a motion to move 4 and 5, business items 4 and 5 to the consent agenda. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Motion carries. We'll move those to the consent agenda. Any other changes? If not, we will move on with our agenda. There are no. Oh yeah, we have a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Second, all in favor? Agenda is approved. There are no presentations this evening, so we'll move on to our public hearing. Our first public hearing, this is not a quasi-judicial hearing, so no need for anyone to be sworn in at this time. Is that correct, Mr. Planner?
Yes,
So,
Quasi-judicial is the third item today.
the third, okay. All right, so we'll wait until that time. Our first public hearing is RC-1805 for Mr. Landis Bullock. I will entertain a motion at this time to open the public hearing.
Make a motion to open the public hearing.
Second.
Second, all in favor?
Thank you.
Sir.
Council and Mayor, here. So the applicant is Landis Bullock. This is a rezoning application. The parcel is the southwest side of Market Street, about 180 feet southwest of Whitley Drive. It's the part of the Keener Lumber Company property. It's a section of the property that is separated by a ditch, kind of separated it off. There's an existing structure there. It's a 1.4 acre structure. They're asking to rezone the property from heavy industrial to B3. So it's more or less a vacant property. There is a open, kind of an open shed on the property adjacent to the B3 zoning. The ditch runs along this property line, so it really does separate this use from the use of this property. The use of the B3 is our most permissive zoning district. Could be any number of uses that are allowed on that site. Given that the B3 property is adjacent to it, staff believes it's an appropriate and consistent with the strategic plan. This shows the future land use map. It's shown as should be a B3 property, and it's currently zoned industrial. It will be consistent with Unified Development Code. When they come through and develop it, they'll have to meet all standards of the current code. And it, like I said, it's compatible with the surrounding land uses because it's B3 zoning adjacent to it, and it's actually guided for B3. So staff believes it's consistent. The planning department and the planning board recommend approval of the amendment and recommend the town council approve the rezoning with a consistency statement declaring it consistent with the town's comprehensive plan, and it's in the public interest. If you have any questions.
Any questions at this time? Director?
One question I have is, the applicant, if he's here, generally, would the buffer be a problem for them, considering it's the heavy industrial to the B3 for their project, or is that something we take into consideration?
I don't know I don't know offhand the buffer requirements, but I don't believe they're significant between a commercial and industrial property. It'd be much different for a residential and industrial, or residential and B3. Mm-hmm.
On the read, there's actually said that is there a ditch that runs beside it?
Correct.
And they said that it gets the water off of the park. Which park, Johnson Park?
I think the ditch originates somewhere by Johnson Park and runs across the highway and then runs to that pond in the back. And there's been some question whether that's a blue line stream or not, and I think it's just a ditch.
We don't have any flooding issues over there anytime related to that. I'm just,
None that I'm aware of. When they choose to develop the site, we will investigate all those items.
Any questions? Anyone in the audience wishing to speak on this matter? No other questions for the council. I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
make a motion.
Motion and a second to close the public hearing. All in favor?
Can I make a motion to approve the request?
Second.
Make a motion to approve the rezoning request.
Have a motion and a second to approve the zoning request. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We'll move on now to the next public hearing. Again, this is not a judicial hearing either, so no need for anyone to be recorded at this time. It's zoning request 18-006, W.S. Frank Lee. This time I'll entertain a motion to open the public hearing.
Make a motion to open the public hearing.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Finance Director?
Thank you. This is an item you're probably all familiar with. This rezoning was before you, I think, a couple months ago. Since that time when it was denied, the applicant has come back with a master plan, because this is a PUD rezoning. So he's come back with a master plan to meet the town's requirements. So again, Frank Lee's the applicant. It's 4 parcels, total of 6.8 acres. Rezoning from R20A to PUD. If you recall, it was a service node guidance in the comprehensive plan, which was the kind of the issue is that we needed a plan showing how it would be a mixed-use development. The property is located here next to Community Park. The credit union is located up to the north, and this is the middle school located here. So the red dot signifies a commercial service node, and that's a kind of a specific type of commercial that is oriented towards the community, the neighborhood around it. And there's quite a bit of language in the comp plan that specifies how that should be developed. And because it specifies mixed use, the only way you can achieve mixed use was through a PUD, as we had discussed a couple weeks ago. And so the applicant has come forward with a mixed use plan. And so commercial service nodes are mixed use. You can only do it in UDO with a PUD, and a PUD master plan is required, like I said. So this is the planned unit development master plan that they've come up with. This is a commercial service center, essentially a convenience gas type of development, with access coming off an internal road, private internal road. To the north, next to Community Park, are mixed-use buildings. It's proposed commercial office on the first floor and residential above. And along this edge of the property, these are proposed 3 apartment buildings. So it's really achieving everything the commercial service node guidance was asking for. Again, you've got internally accessed site, so then the buildings can be pushed a little closer to the road, because all the vehicle use is on the inside rather than a strip center. There is connectivity to Community Park in this area. There'll be trails, I guess along this frontage here, because that's the only frontage they have. There'll be 2 access points, one off of Buffalo Road and one off Booker Dairy. Both of these are likely to be right-in, right-out scenarios in the future as this road develops. The master plan does take into consideration additional right-of-way for the DOT. A DOT permit will be required when they do develop anyway, so they will have to comply. This property here is a DOT owned, and so they will have to get permission to cross DOT's property to get access to Booker Dairy when they do come forward in development. So staff is finding the proposal consistent with the growth management plan. It will be consistent with the Town of Smithfield Unified Development Ordinance. Actually, they're really not deviating from much of anything in the code based on this master plan. Where a PUD, often you can get some negotiated lot lines. I think the biggest thing is that the mixed-use properties don't have road frontage. But beyond that, it pretty much complies with straight-up zoning. And it is compatible with the surrounding land uses. That's in particular what this whole rezoning was about, is how to make that site compatible with the uses around it, so it's connected to Community Park with the trails. It's scaled into the neighborhood. It's got a mix of uses. So it's essentially compatible. The Planning Department and the Planning Board recommend approval of the zoning map amendment with a statement declaring the request be consistent with the town's growth management plan and in the public interest. And with that, the town council is respectfully requested to review the proposal, hold a public hearing, and make a determination whether to approve or deny. With that, I'll take any questions you have.
I have one, Mayor. Mr. Williams, I don't know if you can put the picture up of the layout of the property, proposed plan.
Mm-hmm.
On the bottom there, that would be the west side of the Buffalo Road.
Right here?
Yeah,
Yes.
considering, this is just a question, considering the potential changing of that road, how would that affect what their plans laid out as far as the one in, one out? Is that something they have to work with the state on, or is that
They will have to work with the state, and they may be able to have full access for a while, but at some point we anticipate right in, right out, and the developer also recognizes that.
And the other question I have is, considering our park is, in the eastern border of that property, what is the standard procedure as far as buffering with the PUD as you've stated this plan is?
It'd be the same as a commercial buffering, and it's institutional against commercial, and I believe they're compliant.
So generally the sidewalks connect and those type things?
Yeah. The only sidewalk connecting would be right up in this area, and that connects right up to the trail in the park. And this is actually park property over here as well.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
With the retention ponds, this is my concern, is the retention pond, are they big enough to hold the water that lands there? Because it all filters toward the park, if I remember correctly. I know if you stick a pencil in that sand over there, water comes up.
Right.
So,
And I had Mr. Twisdale in my office a couple times, and his biggest concern is stormwater as well, and he's a neighbor of this property. The plan shows a stormwater pond in this location, a smaller one back in this corner, and one next to the convenience center. Until they do the engineering, we won't know if that's enough of a stormwater situation. It could be they lose some density because they have to have greater ponding. They will have to comply with stormwater management ordinance. Essentially, that should take care of it. I mean, they need to comply with the ordinances.
so either way, the ponds will be big enough to handle any water except for a.
They have to. And if they can't fit it with kind of a surface area, they could go to some more engineered solutions, but that's a cost that they would have to balance with the benefit of developing the site.
I know before I got here and even back in time that I heard that the town had a right to purchase this property. Is there any validity to that? Or had an option on it or anything, or is that just hearsay?
Mike, do you want to respond to that? Was there interest in the town?
I just meant at some point, for years, I've heard that the town had some sort of.
Well, obviously, the town was interested in that corner property, and I think at the time, and this is strictly hearsay, and just knowledge that I had based on the conversations. When the talks were with the state of widening, and when we redid the intersection, did Durwood Stevenson Parkway, there were some discussions at that time about that corner property being turned over to the town once they had finished everything. Nothing ever put into writing, my knowledge, or anything like that. Any other questions?
I had a question, so I read the planning board report, and it said that the first phase would be it says, I'm reading directly, it says, first phase would be the Sheetz gas station. That's what they say here, that's not, I'm just reading what it says, okay? Future phases would be residential. The question is, how long from first phase to second phase? I mean, is there a requirement for that, or could we just, I'm not questioning anything, I'm just based on the information. Could we stuck with just a Sheetz gas station, that's what we got on that lot? I'm just saying, so that it doesn't meet our requirement of residential mixed, you see my point? I mean, that's the question, because the proposal is to meet the requirements of the ordinance, there has to be a mixed use here. If first phase is the Sheetz, then that's not gonna be mixed use, and if something happens and then that doesn't happen, because, economies change, whatever, or people may change their mind, what limits us, you see my point?
Yes, so you're worried that second phase may not look like it's proposed here.
It may not meet the requirements of the ordinance. The ordinance was that we had to have, the thing we were looking for is to rezone it so that it meets that requirement of residential mixed-use purposes. If it's just a Sheetz gas station, it's not a mixed-use purposes, it's just simply, business. And then that does not meet our objective of that no.
Well,
Am I right or wrong?
That's the nature of the master plan. So whenever they come forward with a phase 2 or phase 3, or however they do this, they will have to comply with the master plan. And if they don't comply with the master plan, they'd be forced to come back to the council with a new master plan and get your blessing for it. And at that point, if the council says, well, that service node just doesn't make sense anymore, that would be a council decision. But until then, the master plan holds. Their second phase has to be close, significantly similar to the master plan. Otherwise, they're going to have to reinvent the whole project. You know, we can't guarantee it's going to be residential, but that is something that we have a plan for. You know, as much as you can stick to a plan, and it's really push come to shove, if this thing sits for a great number of years and they can't get a developer interested in residential, then it becomes a decision. The developer proposes something, staff and the council react. Council makes a decision what they think is best for that site. But from today, they're complying with the ordinance. I think they believe they have a plan that's going to work generally. Obviously, their first desire is to get a Sheets in there. I don't know if they have a contract with Sheets, but that's kind of what it's modeled after. There's no guarantees that's what'll go in here either.
So we're looking at, we just have faith and trust that they're gonna do what they say they're gonna do.
Well,
We have no, I mean, that's what you're telling me.
it's not really faith because they have to comply with the master plan, and if they cannot comply with the master plan, it comes back before the council. So it's not faith. You guys will have the final decision.
But the first phase is the Sheets gas station.
Right.
So they put Sheets gas station and never do the other phases.
Then they're sitting on a lot of empty land.
Could be.
Yeah. Unless they can get
Depends
a
on how much they got for
developer.
that Sheets lot. I mean, I'm just saying.
Yeah.
I'm not saying no, my question. I'm just saying trying to find out what's the repercussions on
Yeah,
our
there's
part.
no requirement to make them develop the whole site at
Right.
one time.
But I'm just saying, but because I'm not trying to belabor the point. The question is, we're being asked to make a approval of a mixed-use property. That phase one is a gas station. So there's no promise, no guarantees that we'll have a mixed-use property necessarily, because phase one is a gas station. So we're gonna get a gas station whether we get anything else. That's what it looks to me like. I mean, am I mistaken? I'm not saying that we're not gonna get the other, but there's no, you see my point? Because you're asking us, we're being asked to make the recommendation based upon
The
the
market,
full plan, and the first phase is not residential.
to some degree, the market's going to determine.
I understand.
Yeah.
Well, I understand, but that's all part of that, but that's not the question we're being asked to do, right?
You
We're
have
being
to-
asked to approve this lot based upon mixed-use purposes, but phase one will not be a mixed-use purpose, it will be strictly a business purpose.
I mean, it's not so different than the comprehensive plan as a whole. A comprehensive plan lays out land uses for the whole city, and often, as you know, things change. And things could change here as well. Ultimately, the council there also has the final determination as to what goes there. In this case, it's a master plan that does lay out thoughtfully a mix of uses, and given the market's ability to create this is what they're going to have to do, or something similar. So there is a leap of faith, but there's also a level of control that the council has and the town has, which is a lot more than a straight rezoning, which is what they asked for a month or two ago.
Right. And that's my point too. So if we had rezoned it before, there was nothing that said they couldn't have put a Sheets in then.
They could have put sheets in, but they would have not been required to do residential or had any stick.
But you're telling me they're not really required unless if they decide the rest of the land's not, they don't care about it,
But
they don't
it-
put the Sheets in. You just told me that they
But-
don't have to. Am I right?
In the prior case, they would never have had to come back to the council. They could have put whatever they wanted that was within a B3 zoning, which was a huge list. Here, they've reduced what's allowed to mixed use and apartments.
By the way, I like the design. I think it looks great, personally.
The
I think it
only-
looks great. I think mixed use makes sense to me. I like to see more of that in town. That's exactly what we all talked about. My concern is phase one being not residential, being business
Right.
only. then that doesn't say that we have a mixed use. I would feel much more comfortable if in their first phase they include residential or mixed use in their first phase. I feel much more comfortable about them meeting the requirements.
Understood.
But only a gas station, and I'm a big Sheetz fan too, so I got nothing wrong with Sheetz. Okay, you believe me? My car got more Sheetz gas than anybody else. But the issue is, I would feel much more at ease if I saw in phase one included the mixed use purposes that we're being asked to approve it for.
Understood.
You know, so.
Any other questions? So as far as the apartments go, do we know have any idea as far as what anticipated rents are or anything?
I do not. These were all based off of a development in Clayton. So, you know, I don't think there's been any developer interest, so I don't think they've ever gotten to that degree of detail.
No plans that you know of at the moment for any subsidized housing or anything, apartments or anything?
There's been no discussion at all.
But if approved, that could happen.
I don't know who would put up the subsidy. It could be affordable if the market, if they can manage to do that. I don't know what the rents are gonna be. The applicant is here. You could ask it what they know.
Anyone in the audience wishing to speak for or against this?
You want to go ahead?
If I might be able to put some, answer some questions ahead of time. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. Appreciate the opportunity to be before you again. I would like to start off saying,
So, Mr. Embler, I know who you are, but if you will, please state your name, address
excuse me, I'm
for the
Paul Embler.
record, and who you are representing, because I don't think you're the applicant. Is that
no,
correct?
that's correct.
Okay.
I'm
Thank you,
Paul
sir.
Embler. I live at 11 Kentwood Drive, Smithfield, North Carolina. I'm representing the applicant, Frank Lee, and I was the designer of record on the proposed development. First off, there's been a lot of discussion about phase one. We have never talked about phases. So we don't know what phase. It could be the apartments coming first, and my question would be, if the apartments were coming before the commercial, would you be asking the same question? It's a mixed-use development overall, and that's what we're looking for here. It is in compliance with the ordinance that is written with the town. Matter of fact, as the planning director mentioned, it meets or exceeds almost all the existing requirements for a traditional development. So it's a PUD, but it actually meets the current standards. There really is no phase one as it's been presented, because it would be inappropriate to talk about a phasing system early on in a PUD. First off, you got to get the approval of the PUD, and then those phases come a little bit later on as the development is done. But there would have to be a lot of, most of the utilities and the roads would all go into phase one development, whatever that might turn out being, because they all have to be served. Whether it's the residential or the commercial or the office, all have to be served by those utilities. And I guess if that clarifies anything, I hope it does. And Mr. Lee does send his regards that he was not able to be here tonight. But if you have any questions, I'll be happy to carry those to him also.
Yes, I do, because I'm reading the minutes from
Justification.
I'm reading the,
Justification sheet.
and the information from the planning board, and it says here, Mr. Paul Embler and Mr. Frank Lee have done a great job turning the project into what staff is looking for. The first phase would be a Sheetz gas station. Future phases would be residential. Staff is saying this is consistent with the growth management plan. It will be consistent with the UDO. We're asking the planning board to make recommendations to approve to the town council. That's in the planning board minutes from the meeting. So, I mean, I'm only reading what they said. So I don't know anything about the phases either. I'm just saying, so am I Stephen, you were, I mean, I don't know if anybody on the planning board's here, but that's, did phases get discussed during the planning board meeting?
They may have been discussed. I'm not sure if that was discussed with intent, or if it just, they were thinking more about the sheets. I mean, I heard sheets before I heard anything else with the previous rezoning. But again, we've not seen a development plan. I don't know if there's any development contracts. I mean, Paul, you could ask.
There are no contracts on the table because the client has not exercised his option and will not until he has the zoning approval. That was the contingent offer that he made initially, and then he came back again this month at the request of the planning department to come back as a PUD as opposed to a straight rezoning, which was presented last time. And so as far as talking about phases, we put examples in there, hopefully to clarify things. We actually went and took pictures of the sheets. It could have been a speedway or it could have been something else, but the sheets was more in keeping with what was proposed there. I will go on and further tell you some of the office apartment uses there. Those are photographed and they come out of Riverwood. The apartment units are actually up on Guy Road in Clayton. So if you want to go look at them, that's why we took the pictures and actually incorporated them so you'd have some visualization of what was in the intent.
Mr. Embler, the traffic flow, could you just touch on that and what your thoughts are as far as how that would affect the area, considering the schools in the area? Is that gonna work for you?
Well, we've had preliminary conversations with NCDOT, and first off, they requested that we provide for 130-foot symmetrical widening, which means there's about an additional 35 foot on this side of the road that would be given to DOT for the widening of the road at some future time. And
Is that why you left the gap?
yeah. The property line is actually this line right here, and the proposed right-of-way is this line right here. So you can see that much is being reserved for future DOT roadway widening. And the council is familiar that this is, Buffalo Road is on their 10-year plan, and it's already through the RPO process. So this will be coming forward from DOT in the near future. They have indicated that this would ultimately be a right in and right out, and that this exit over here would probably be a right in and right out also. And DOT, both of those roads are DOT roads. They will control how they're accessed and egressed.
What happens to the house? Are you gonna buy the adjacent land all the way to Booker Dare Road?
Speaking of the house up.
Are you
Yeah.
talking about this house?
Yes, sir.
That is on a separate tract of land. DOT's property line is that line right there.
You're gonna build it right next to the house? Gonna be buffered or anything?
DOT requested that the road be removed as far from the property, from the intersection as possible, so we moved it all the way to the minimum setback line,
How far?
15 feet,
The road's gonna be 15 feet off the house,
the property line,
and that's how far off the house, do you know?
about 30 feet.
There's no buffer.
There is a buffer,
Of what?
landscape plant material.
You're gonna buy all the other land to, Buffalo Road?
I don't know. DOT has not offered it for sale. They had offered a right-of-way access across the property.
So at this time, Mr. Emily, you're saying that you do have a written agreement for right-of-way access across that?
There is no written agreement. There is an agreement from DOT that said that they would provide they would make available a right-of-way, I guess is the correct word to use. And of course, if they were to change that, then this plan would have to be significantly altered and probably come back before you again.
Is that the case?
That would be a significant deviation, going from 2 access points to 1. That would require this plan to come completely back.
So the site plan will not come back necessarily?
The site plan would come back, because they would have to revise their site plan significantly, which would require them to come back before the council and essentially a rezoning to change the plan.
So when we, I mean, but when, this is a kind of negotiated zoning district, which is
Correct.
a little bit avant-garde. And each one of them, the site plans are gonna have most of the specification, like the buffers, he says, how close you are to the house or anything else.
Yeah, they'll have to comply with current zoning.
And conditions cannot, or conditions supposedly designed now to be put on this property or at the site plan stage? Or both?
You can condition a PUD master plan, essentially to bring it up to code.
Yeah, I'm just trying to learn as we go. I'm looking at the code.
Yeah, it's,
And,
I had to do a lot of reading about North Carolina law rather than our code to figure out exactly what is required with a PUD master plan
and it looks like the conditions could be at the site plan level or at the PUD level, right?
at the PUD level.
And there are not
So-
many right
If-
now.
If you,
There are no conditions because I found this plan to meet really all of our standards. Other than the road frontage requirement for the properties back here, they don't have actually road frontage on a right-of-way, which is one of the requirements for a property, and that would be I think that's gonna be a separate property. I mean, some of that discussion will have to be figured out, how this is broken up into lots. But, you know, if that's a separate lot or separate lots, they don't have road frontage, so that's a deviation. But beyond that, there really aren't many deviations from our current code, that I'm aware of.
But if this property were gonna have an adverse effect, such as that house, I'm just looking for one, so we have it in the future.
This would be the time.
Now would be the time, as I understand it from this.
Absolutely.
Sort of vague code.
Absolutely. So if the condition would be to add additional buffering along that property line or along that road, it's not a property line, it's not their property line. This would be the time to add that if the council believes that's an issue.
well, that would be controlled by DOT because it's a right-of-way, and we can't dictate what DOT does and doesn't do.
Well,
Where their property abuts the residential property, it is buffered in accordance with the town requirements.
it's the town board's job to buffer that property, protect that house. If you want it approved, and, right? Isn't that right, Mr. Planner?
I believe that if they are,
Not the states.
if they are punching a road through the DOT's property,
Right.
whatever it takes to make this road come through within that space, they could be required to put landscaping in, and DOT's not gonna object, as long as it doesn't affect Booker Dairies or sight lines. So I believe it is appropriate to put some buffering along this property line, or this edge of this right-of-way to buffer this house. Of course, it'll require DOT's approval, just like the road, but I think that's a reasonable condition.
And Mr. Spence, in the packet that was delivered, there's, I think, 10 drawings in there, and the second drawing is shows all the buffering, the setbacks, the landscape buffers, the setbacks, and everything that's included in there. I think it would be the next sheet. So you can reference to that to see where the buffers are.
I think that's why I looked at it, because I saw no buffers on that road.
It's a street right away. There is adequate room to put landscape plantings there because this is the actual property line. And this is the right-of-way line, the back of the sidewalk. So you have that area in there that could be landscaped.
That's 30 feet's kind of close. If you're sleeping at night, 30 feet's kind of close. Right.
That's the minimum setback of any residential unit in the town of Smithfield from a street frontage.
So the people that lives in that house, they're not, has anybody talked to them? I'm just curious.
That's why we're having these meetings, to
Okay.
give
I
them
didn't
an
know if
opportunity.
anybody's here representing those people. And, cause looks like to me too, that evidently, they've infringed on somebody else's property, cause their parking lot is on this side, well, this line with the lines on this side, right? Their parking lot's on this side, where the line goes at, they're clearly, their cars are parked on this side.
That is apparent.
Okay. So we definitely cut their yard off, but it wasn't really their yard, so. If the drawing is accurate. Thank you, sir.
Drawing. Know that it's been surveyed and staked off, right?
The property will be surveyed if the option is exercised, yes. And we'll know for sure at that time.
So, Mr. Emlin, one question. As far as Buckderry Road goes, and the widening of that, and it's supposed to be divided, right?
That
That
is my
section.
understanding, that it will be a super street by NCDOT, which means it will have a median in it.
Right, so therefore, if you're coming out of that exit, you will have to go to the right.
That is correct.
So, any thought, as far as the number of apartments that are going here, and you're dumping all that traffic on the Buckderry Road? We already, as a town, have an issue right now with traffic with the two schools that are located in the church. New doctor's office, which is a great thing to have, don't get me wrong, but it's also something that I get considerable calls about all the time. So it is one of my concerns that we are now proposing something to go more traffic and only going to allow it to go in one direction.
That
Which
is
is my
the-
issue with the super street anyway. So anybody from the DOT that's listening or whatever, already voiced my opinion about this.
Yeah.
To me, making the traffic go in one direction doesn't make
Yeah.
sense.
One way or the other, there will be a TA, a traffic analysis, a TIA, prepared. The town has it in their ordinance for development of this magnitude. It would come at the permitting, site improvement, permitting process. And DOT has also indicated they want a TIA also, so.
So would it be appropriate, though, that we put a condition on it first to make sure that that happens at an early stage?
If the council believes that's an important condition, it certainly is the time to do it. It is required in code, like Paul said, but often you put conditions on to raise everyone's awareness that those are requirements, even though they're buried in a code. So to bring those big issues forward, I think that's appropriate.
Like I said, the area is prime for development. I want to see the area developed, and also traffic is a concern. Be able to address that. I have to answer to them, and so it needs to be done this way. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Question?
Just to follow up on that, Mr. Taylor in the planning board meeting expressed his concerns about traffic also. So I think it would definitely be, I realize it's going to happen, but definitely needs to. That's something that we want to make sure that everybody knows. We are concerned with the traffic in that area. It is a concern. Because now, I think though, when you build, but let's also say though, as Kelly Drive opens up, that will appease some of the traffic that's going to like News Charter, because they'll be able to go to that backside. And my understanding is that they did some surveys for the people at News Charter and found that a lot of the people that go to News Charter actually they access the road from Buffalo Road to come in. So they wouldn't be on Buckadere Road anyway. So that's going to alleviate some of that issue. I think, I'm just saying, that on the other side, but that also, and that road will be built pretty soon, right?
Yeah.
So
In progress.
that will appease some. My question is, how are they going to, I don't know, because you know more about what the DOT is planning than I do. The question is, so if you turn to because I'm looking at the one-way in on this side here that's facing Buffalo Road. If you turn to the right on Buffalo Road, there's a medium, so there's not going to be a crossover there to get in, I'm assuming, because that would be a left turn in, and they wouldn't allow that in. So that means they have to go down somewhere and then turn around and come back, correct? If they go that way. Now, you say, well, why don't they just keep going straight and turn to the right? Well, yeah, but people don't do all the things they should do.
That is the correct assessment of DOT's philosophy. It's a safety issue with DOT to minimize the number of left turns on a road, and they only allow them at certain crossover points.
Do you know where that's what I'm saying, for the Buffalo Road going that way, do you know where they're gonna
They
allow that? 'Cause
haven't
there's not one at
designed
all?
it yet.
So where you have to go all the way into town and turn around? Well, till you get to Hospital Road?
Turn into the middle school,
But you can't get across, right?
well,
Are they gonna have a road across from, that was the
we
question.
don't know.
Okay.
We don't know where.
There would be a crossing at the middle school, and there'd be a crossing at the intersection of Bookadary and Buffalo Road. I mean, so you're gonna have two crossings
Okay.
within 2,000 feet of each other.
Mr. Embler, based on your experience, and I don't know, that's why I'm asking, we're discussing the left and right. Would that distance be adequate if they were to put a traffic signal there, or is that not an option, based on your experience?
My experience with DOT, they will not allow another traffic signal within 2,000 feet of Bookadary and Buffalo Road. That's why I said the next traffic signal will probably be at the middle school.
Any other questions at this time?
Okay,
Else,
thank
sir?
you.
Moment. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to speak for or against this? You will please state your name and address for the record.
Tucker Twisdale, 1755 Buffalo Road. I only have 3 remarks. Number 1, I hope this council will think long and hard whether you want to turn this property loose for development rather than use it to expand your park, which is very much in use and has quite a density of use all the time. So my thing would be, I would think long and hard before I turn the option of using that. Secondly, the option that he referred to as far as when Frank Lee has an option on that property runs out on July the 1st. So therefore, they are pushing to get this done so that that option does not cease. Third, I think this council let an excellent opportunity to have a complete retirement center from individual houses to assisted living to care to full-term care slipped by their fingers, and I very definitely think this is something that the council, I hope in the future when you get another chance to get 60-something acres to have rezoned, that you will very definitely look at that possibility of utilizing that for the county as well as the town. I think it's something that was very much needed in this area. The only comment I'm going to make about what they're saying is, in case none of you know, the town is out there now in the process of filling up a sinkhole in the middle of Buffalo Road. So water is a problem. And that happened today. So I do hope they get it done for dark, because I don't want anybody going through the hole. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tisdale. That gonna be fixed, Mr. Manager?
They're out there working on it now.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak for or against this matter? Any other questions from council? If not, I will entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
Make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second, all in favor? Pleasure of the council. Again, as Mr. Spence mentioned, we can, a little unusual, right? I don't know that we've done one of these in a while or ever, last few years anyway. So we can put conditions on this, is that correct?
On the
Mr.
site plan.
Spence?
It's
As far as the
conditions on
site,
the
yeah, as
master
far as the
plan.
site plan goes, Mr. Spence, that's correct. You can do that as
Yes,
part of this
yes.
process. So if there are conditions that you want placed on it, not saying you want them, but if there are, now's the time to do it as far as the site plan goes. If not, then we just have it, and then we go based off of what's been presented.
The conditions that were questioned for are already part of the code, though, correct? And so
Well, there-
it's
there
gonna be
are-
done at the-
There are screening requirements, but they're not addressing the off-site part of this. However, he does have a landscape plan as part of his presentation, which shows landscaping of that connector out to Booker Dairy. So there is some landscaping there. If the council believes there should be more landscaping than what's shown in the landscape plan, I would make that condition.
I certainly believe that based off of other projects that's been done by this owner, going to do it right. I don't have any reason to believe otherwise. However, you got to understand that it could be sold to someone else. And we've approved the rezoning. The property could be sold after July 1st, from what I just heard, to someone else. So this runs with the land, correct?
Right.
So it could be sold. So who knows what else someone else may come in and do, right? And we've approved it. So if there are other things that you would like to make sure goes in, just like what we were talking, Mr. Spence's concern about this property, I feel confident that the current developer would put, or owner, or potential owner would put enough buffering there, especially coming in. But as I see it right now, it's not on the plan. It would hurt. Just to protect that property. It's not all. But it's up to you, Jim. Traffic is a concern, but the traffic study is what it is, right? We'll have to-
Same is true for the water drainage issues. And to your point, they're not gonna violate it, no matter what.
They have to comply with the stormwater management plan.
They don't have to meet the requirements to not flood the park.
They have to control all runoff leaving the property to pre-development levels.
So if it floods now, that's okay. That's what you're saying. That's okay, I understand.
They can't make it worse.
Mr. Ambler. Mr. Ambler, you might be coming back to the front.
Can you go back one slide, I think, the one without the landscape? Mr. Embler, the question that I had is, considering the design of our current park, currently that phase of the park is just kind of dead-end parking area. Would it be appropriate, if this project went through, that we can have an agreement to connect that? Because it would not seem reasonable to leave it that way. What's your thoughts? Because my concern is that the park wouldn't be utilized as a park. It could potentially become, it's not visible anymore. We could render the benefit of the park.
From a design point of view, I don't think it's a very good idea, specifically seeing how the client's proposing private roads and not public roads. And to have public traffic diverted through a private road development is not a good thing to do.
How about pedestrian traffic?
We have discussed that, and there is a connection to the loop on the Greenway. If you look.
It's right here.
Can you follow that white line? That is actually the sidewalk on the Greenway as it exists now.
Okay.
And we're proposing a connector that comes in here, connected to a sidewalk system that comes all the way back out here to Buffalo. And also it allows you to go internal. There will be shops and stuff in here that pedestrians in the park would probably like to come to. You know, there could very well be an ice cream shop, a coffee shop. it's geared more for that Main Street type shop.
Perfect. That's right. Your concern is, okay.
Just seems that we have to have a partnership somehow to make that better. I think it can hinder our park. Thank you, Mr. Wood.
You're welcome.
I make a motion we approve the request. Submitted. Oh, my bad.
Right? Any further?
We've already had a first and second. We just haven't voted.
Yeah, first and second, close the public hearing. Say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Now, Mr. Dillon?
I make a motion we approve the request as submitted.
Motion to approve as submitted. Things that people would like to add?
I'd like to add the traffic, just I know that it's gonna be there, and that it has to be done, but like Steve said, you know, just go ahead and put it to the forefront that there will be a traffic study, even though it's there. I get that, just because, you know, there are a lot of kids, a lot of traffic right there, and I'm sure that when the study is done, that it'll have to be abided by. But I just want to make that sure that I put it in the forefront.
John, are you okay with
I'll
adding
amend
that
it
portion
to
to your motion?
Add the traffic study, yes.
We have a motion with the traffic study being added. That's second.
Second.
All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Thank you. So, John, can you make a motion? One thing I forgot, as part of this process, we need to adopt a statement that says it's proposed development was in agreement with our road management plan.
Page 51.
You would just make a motion that it is in agreement with our consistent, I guess, with our
Page 51.
road plan.
Hereby approved. So it's page 51. Here.
Based on the motion, majority vote of the Town of Smithfield Town Council for the special use permit application number SUP 18-06 is hereby approved.
And that's inconsistent with the comprehensive road plan. That's all I need.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. You make that part of your motion? All right. Do I have a second on that?
Second.
Motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I forgot that even with the manager and the clerk handing me a note, making sure, just so that you guys know that I made sure that happened. Sorry about that. All right, we will move on now to the next public hearing. This is a quasi-judicial hearing, so anyone, this has to do with the Faith Miracle Ministry, Church of Christ. If there's anyone wishing to speak regarding SUP-18-06, anyone wishing to speak for or against this includes the applicant. If you will, please stand and be sworn in by the clerk.
Please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth so help you God?
I do.
Very much. Okay, again, this is SUP-1806, Faith Miracle Ministry Church of Christ for All People. I'll entertain a motion to open the public hearing.
I move. A second.
Motion by Councilman Lee and a second by Councilman Barber. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Stand open.
All right. Mr. Mayor and Council, this indeed is a special use permits quasi judicial for the Faith Miracle Ministry Church of Christ for All People. So the applicant is Leonard Sprill. 602 Blount Street is the location, and this permit is to operate a church on the property. It's a 1.879 acre parcel in the R6 zoning district. It's currently vacant. This is the zoning for the property. It's O&I. Why is that? I thought it was, Mark said it's an R6 property, but I'm not sure if this is the land use plan. What has he got here? Yeah, this is the land use plan. So it's guided for O&I, so we're consistent with the O&I, I'm sorry. This is the location of the property. The area blue with striped is the floodplain that had recently been mapped, and it's been better for this whole neighborhood, including this parcel. So there's less floodplain, which has made this property more developable than it had been in the past. This is the proposal for the property. Sort of a cross-shaped church in the center with parking surrounding. Stormwater to the back with all the appropriate setbacks and buffering will be required. Stormwater will be required. This is an image of the church. You can see that. It's a simple structure with a steeple. So the internal circulation meets or exceeds the UDO. 52 parking spaces are proposed, again meeting the UDO requirements. On-site stormwater, they will have to meet the stormwater management requirements once it's engineered out. Standard landscape yards are provided. Again, they'll have to provide all the required plans with their site plan submittal, which will follow approval of the site plan. Or sorry, approval of the special use permit. So staff has prepared a number of findings related to the special use permit, and I'm not going to go through those unless you'd like me to. They're in your staff report. Unless you ask me to, I'm going to zip past them. Okay. The planning department's recommending approval of the special use permit with one condition, that the applicant does submit a complete landscape plan, stormwater plan, lighting plan, utility and grading plan that meets all the requirements of the UDO prior to site plan approval. And that's kind of a standard code we put on special use permits. And with that, the town council is respectfully requested to review the request, hold a public hearing, and make a decision with findings of fact.
Questions at this time? Council?
I have a question on page 48, in your finding of fact number 1, it says the car sales operation. That's something was thrown in there, what's supposed to be in there? Or
Let's see.
number 1? That's something that kind of got put in there by
Is that on the,
Yeah, I read
It
this.
said the car sales, when they sell the cars at church.
that must have been a holdover. My apologies, I didn't catch that on when I reviewed
Okay.
this.
I just looked at it and said,
That is a typo.
okay, I just want to make sure that they're not selling cars at church.
Yeah, mine says additional rental operation. I think there have been some recycled reports.
I would just like to ask the applicant, Mr. Sproul, just are you aware of the area of East Smithfield, Blunt Street, Sackett Avenue? Just considering there's probably about 6 or 7 churches, already on the 2 streets. I was just asking, are is the church now and for the congregation? Right now, we have to support. Right now, we just change that part. Going for it, have support for the church, not a board.
Councilmember Lee, do you want them to come up and speak at the microphone for the record?
Anything else at this time?
Just, one other question as far as, you know, what would be the plan as far as, storm water detention facility? What we have in mind?
So at that time, I will ask the applicant or their representative. You represent, state your name, address for the record, please, sir. Who you represent?
Mayor, Councilman, good to be here. My name is Brian Leonard. I'm with BRL Engineering and Surveying at 112 East Johnson Street in Smithfield. And regarding the stormwater, similar to the last public hearing, we will address all of the requirements of the code. We have an area designated, as you can see, which is the lowest spot of the property at the back. And right now, our preliminary engineering has indicated that it will be a dry pond. It will not be required to be a wet pond. So the size of it, in the last couple days, I've done some more engineering of that pond, and the size that you see on the preliminary plan is about the size that it appears that it will be.
Any other questions?
Question, I know on occasion, question will be, if you said 52 parking spaces. So the question is, if you go over that, you'll park up and down the street, I'm assuming. Would that be a traffic problem on that particular section of the street? I mean, I don't know,
All Blunt Street, River Road, so, you know, I know there's some residents, here tonight, that, I mean, they affect them, I know, that is a narrow road.
I don't know if you, does that one of I guess, that's something we could, if it becomes an issue, I guess we could put no parking signs up there, if that became an issue. Obviously, we're hoping you have great success then, that your parking lot fills up, right? That would be an issue for us if we had parking on the street. You know, if you have something special or whatever, people park on the street, it could be hindering to the neighborhood over there. That's the only question I have, because it is a pretty narrow road over there too.
Right. Again, to speak to that, it's my understanding that the requirement is for every 3 spaces, there has to be a parking space, and we meet that requirement, of course, but, you know, there could always be those Sundays, like any other church or congregation. It's intermittent at best. You know, it's pretty much on Sundays and any other special events. So it wouldn't be a regular or daily occurrence. But we have met the requirements of the code for the parking spaces.
That was a good point he brought up, though, with the Smith Collins Park over there. Parking because it's close enough, they could actually take advantage of that too, could they not, if they had to?
I'm actually trying to count the parking spaces, but I noticed on our plan, we actually said that there was 52 spaces
Right.
required, and we actually provided 62. So I want to double check that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yes, there's 62 spaces provided on the plan, which is above and beyond. However, there has been some discussion with the architect recently that we might eliminate a couple of those spaces. I don't think we would eliminate more than 4 of those spaces, and that's just to make a little additional room at the back for the pond. So right Even so, even with the elimination of 2 to 4 spaces, we would still exceed the minimum requirement.
Anything else? The applicant is here, is that correct? So, do you agree with the testimony that our planning director gave earlier regarding the project? Do you agree with everything that he said? Do you have anything else for your representative to add, in addition to Mr. Leonard, to what you've already said? Is there anything else you would like to add?
One other question, be appropriate to ask. Doesn't really pertain to the request, but is your hours of operation gonna be what, normal church hours, or do you have, it says a ministry center, will you do stuff during the week as well? I'm just seeking. Pretty much just the Sunday, Wednesday type service as far as the parking.
Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to come forward and speak for or against this? Not seeing any. Any other questions from the council? If not, gentlemen, I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
Make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to close the public hearing. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Public hearing is now closed. Gentlemen, we do have findings of fact that we can go through on in your agenda package. You have your right to- you need to have a motion on the findings of fact. One or the other.
I move we approve findings of fact 1 through 8.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve the findings of fact. Second, all in favor, aye.
Mayor, I make a motion that we approve the request, the conditional use permit with the conditions as stated by the planning board on page 49. Include the landscape, stormwater, lighting, utility, grading plan, and the building elevation meets the UDO.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve SUP-18-06. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
This time we'll move on to page 71, gentlemen, in your package. Item number 4 is the presentation and hopefully the adoption of fiscal year 2018-2019 budget. Gentlemen, while the manager is getting ready, we do need to have a public hearing, so I'll entertain a motion to open the public hearing at this time.
So moved, Mayor.
Motion
Second.
and a second to open the public hearing. All in favor? Manager, I will turn it over to you, sir, for the 2018-2019 budget.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If it is okay with you, I'd like to step out.
Sure.
What we have before you tonight is budget presentation for fiscal year 18-19 that begins July 1st and ends June 30th, 2019. The mayor and the council here, as well as all the department heads here, put a lot of work into this proposal. It started as far back as December, and it's been an ongoing project up to tonight. So we'll hit the highlights here. Our budget is balanced in all 3 funds. We have 3 funds here for the city. They are the general fund, which captures everything that's not basically in the electric or the water and sewer fund. As you can see, we have $13,700,000 budgeted in the general fund, which is about $943,000 more than what was budgeted last year. In the electric fund, we have about $16.8 million budgeted there, which is about $13,000 more than last year. In the water sewer fund, we have $8.7 million, which is about $1.7 million more than what was budgeted last year. Since this is balanced budget, that means the revenue is also more, not just the expenditures. Part of that big increase in the water and sewer fund is a $750,000 project for a 16-inch water line going down Durwood Stevenson Highway to the west side, which $500,000 of that is grant money through the Golden Foundation. We have no tax increase. We're currently at 57 cents. We will remain there under this budget proposal. We also have no changes in electric fees. We'll talk about electric fees in a minute. We have reduced those by 12% in the last 3 years. We do have slight increases to water and sewer fees, and that's based on a 2016 study that was done showing that we need to increase our fees based on our capital projects that we have pending for future years. So 2 years ago, we saw a slight increase. You'll see a slight increase this year, and then it's projected to have another slight increase in 2 more years. Our general fund balance remains well above our fiscal policy requirements, 25%, and includes necessary capital expenditures of $1.4 million in the general fund, almost $1 million in the electric fund, and about $1.3 million in the water and sewer fund, and that's not including the water plant expansion that we'll talk about in a second. We maintain our medical benefits for the employees at similar levels, and we provide a salary adjustment equal to about 3% increase for our employees. Major capital expenditures that are in the budget. We have 6 police cars budgeted at $168,000 and 2 squad videos, about $15,000. We have 19 air packs for the fire department budgeted at $160,000. The air packs are expiring, cannot be used after this year. We do have a grant we requested for about $140,000 of that money. If that grant comes through, then we'll need about $20,000 of that money. And we'll wait to see how that happens. But because they're expiring this year, we have to budget the proper amount. We have to make the approaches so that our firemen are safe going into smoke-filled environments. We also have about $47,000 in replacement fire nozzles, which increase their hose sizes and allow them to use additional water putting out this fire. In public works, we have our normal $260,000 for regular street resurfacing and our power bill money that comes back to us from the state. The council saw fit to add an additional $320,000 to that this year for additional street resurfacing throughout the town. And we also have a $30,000 pickup being replaced in the street department. In sanitation, we have about a $200,000 truck with a hook leaf box. That's the box that you see go around picking up all the leaves around town in the fall and spring. The one we have is very old and it's broken down quite a bit. That's a very large truck. It's not just a small truck. That's due to the cost of the vehicle. The bulk of our Parks and Recreation parks money is going to Smith Collins this year at $56,000 to upgrade and replace the playground equipment there. And we have $18,000 reserved to replace the pool bleachers and some pool repairs that need to be done at this track. The water plant, we talked about that just a second ago. What we have is about $15.4 million, almost $15.5 million to enlarge the water plant. That's the majority of that is money that we'll be taking out a very low interest loan for about 20 years to the state. The balance of it is going to be a capacity fee, a little over $3 million paid by the county to the city as a one-time payment so that they can draw more water from our water plant for continued development out in the county. We have a riverbank refurbishment, which this year we had the design done and that's completed. We have information from the Corps of Engineers now that we can move forward with that. And that basically is allowing us where we draw water out of the river for our water plant. That's gonna cost us about $200,000. We have our continued inflow and infiltration reduction, for our water and sewer. Spent about $100,000 there next year, trying to make sure that we are identifying any types of leaks in our sewer pipes, so that we're not sending rainwater to the sewer plant to be treated. We talked about the 16-inch water line on Derwood-Stevenson Highway, which is a $750,000 project, of which $500,000 of that is grant money. We have $150,000 in lift station repairs and $40,000 designated to a tie-in at Old Goldsboro Road. What that means is it's going to tie in the water line there, basically making the loop. We've had some water discoloration in that neighborhood, and this is intended to take care of that problem. Also replacing the utility truck at $50,000. Electric, we continue with our smart grid, which is our smart meters, continue adding smart meters so that we can complete that loop throughout the town. And our voltage conversion project, which started a couple of years ago and continues throughout the town. We budgeted half of a bucket truck last year. This is the second half being budgeted, so that we can replace one bucket truck in the electric.
Mike, just speaking a couple seconds on what the voltage conversion is.
Yeah, that is a question that is much easier answered by
Ted.
I can skirt around that issue and I can kind of explain it, but if you
In
want it to be
30
totally accurate, we'll let.
in 30 seconds, Ted.
Oh, you're limiting me.
But it is a major project that we've been working on.
Yeah, what we do is we essentially convert the power supply in the town from 115 kVA to 230, or to 720. We're doubling the power supply, which halves the load resistance. All that means is it's a more stable power supply, less likely to have outages, and we take full advantage of our Broadman Road transformer. And it was a 20-year project that was started 4 or 5 years ago, and we're in the year 4 and 5. But it's more stability in your power. Try and get rid of any of those outages. I can't stop all the squirrels, but we can certainly deal with some aged power lines.
All right, thank you, sir. Appreciate it. And thanks, Mike. I just wanted to point that out because that is a long-term plan that we've been working on and make our system more reliable.
I'd also add that that's an important tool for economic development. A lot of manufacturers and larger businesses come in, need this type of electricity and this type of security in order to locate it. So it's also an important issue for us going forward for economic development. Again, we have no changes in the tax rate, no changes in electric rates, a small increase in water and sewer charges, which will equate to about $5.50 for the residential in-town customer that uses an average of 4,000 gallons of water per month. There's no capital asset transfer from electric, says to utility fund, but it should say to general fund, from the electric fund to the general fund. So all the money from electricity is staying in the electric fund, all the money that's in water and sewer staying there, the general fund is being self-supported. And again, we continue that Broadman Road substation conversion project, which is what Ted Prayers was talking about. Some future issues that are going on, they're still kind of out there that may impact us in the very near future. Johnson County is evaluating a sewer rate increase of about 5%. That if that gets approved in their budget, I think they're looking at implementing that around September 1st. So if that's the case, then our fees are going to go up 5%. The council will have to decide at that point how to deal with that. Keep in mind again that water and sewer is an enterprise fund and it's supposed to be 100% totally self-supported. Also, Johnson County is considering an increase in tipping fees of $2 a ton in the landfill. If they do that, that's going to increase our costs annually about $10,000. If it's passed on to the customer, that would be about a 20-cent increase per month per resident. Also, We reduced our electric rates 4.5% last year, like I said, 12% overall the last few years. But Electric Cities is looking at a possible increase in their electric costs of 3% starting in April of next year. Now, the council saw fit to create a rate stabilization fund this year, and we believe that the money that we have saved there will carry us through the remainder of that last quarter in 2018-19, so that we won't have to change our rates. But we will have to do another rate study and see how that's going to impact us in the long run. So as we go forward into fiscal year 19-20, so a year from now, we're going to be faced with some questions about whether or not we're going to have to raise our utility rates. The other problem is that Electric Cities is also looking at increasing it again the following year, another 3%. And again, that's our wholesale rate, that's what we get charged for electricity. So if they raise the rate, it affects everybody's rate. So we'll be looking at that long and hard, but we feel pretty confident this year we'll be able to remain status quo with our electric rates throughout the fiscal year. Our property taxes, as you can see, have been pretty steady. We have about a 98 to 99% collection rate on our property taxes. We feel very confident. That's a very stable form of revenue for the town, the biggest revenue source for our general fund. You see a little bit of a dip there in 17. This chart's a little deceiving because there's only $50,000 between those two lines. So I think what happened there, you see 16 is a little higher. I think the collection rate, 16 was a little bit higher, 16 kind of carried over into 17, making that lower. We're seeing our property values go up, and as properties sell and they're reevaluated, so we're hoping for additional property revenue, tax revenue next year. Our sales tax is pretty consistent as well, another very stable form of sales tax. And I want to point out, just so everyone realizes, I mentioned this last year as well, all of our sales tax, or all of our hotels, and all of our shopping, and all of our restaurants don't come back to Smithfield. Most of that property, most of those sales tax money goes to the state, and then it goes to the county, and then it gets divided up based on population. So we do not get the lion's share of our own sales tax. We did, we'd be in a whole lot better shape. That sales tax is spread throughout the county, so there's a city in Johnston County that has more people in it than Smithfield. They end up getting more of our property tax money than we do.
So talk to your legislators.
That's right. And this is certainly not anything that's created here. This is something that's created in Raleigh.
We're providing the services, fire, EMS, police, as well as stormwater, streets, and everything else, which is a good thing for the properties, but then we don't get proportional share of the tax that's generated from that. Sorry.
No, it's all fine. Our fund balance comparisons, our general fund and our electric fund are both at about 64% at the end of what was fiscal year 17 last year when we had our audit done. Our electric rates are up about 43, 44%, and those are very high fund balances. That helps us keep our interest rates low and helps us to make sure that we have enough money in reserve to do the things we need to do should we have any type of emergency. I anticipate the current fiscal year that we're in now, which would be fiscal year 2018, you're going to see all of those go up a little bit more. We did not use a lot of fund balance this year for any of these projects. Meaning that means we're living on what we make. We're not overextending ourselves and being very conservative in our expenditures. This is kind of how your general fund breaks down, where the money's going. You can see that police and fire, your public safety take the lion's share of your tax dollars, followed by recreation. If you add the aquatic center and recreation together, you got about 13% there. Sarah Yard Center now is another 1%, so it's actually about 14%. Followed by the sanitation, which is somewhat self-supporting in fees, and then by your streets, which actually went up this year by about 2%. It was about 4% of this budget last year, and that's because of the $320,000 allocation of fund balance to add to the street resurfacing project for this coming year. Our water sewer fund is fairly consistent. I'll back up one more, just one more thing I want to say about this. Your debt service is about 7% of your overall budget here. That is low, so we do a good job again of not taking out debt we don't have to take out. It was about 10% last year. We had about $260,000 of annual expenditures fall off this year. Next year, we're going to have about another $160,000 in annual expenditures fall off. So we're doing real well in watching how we're spending the money. Here's your water and sewer fund, with the bulk of it going to water and sewer distribution. You got about 25% of it going to the water plant, where we make the water. 14% going to the debt that we currently have for water and sewer. That 4% of contingency is money set aside for unplanned occurrences. This is your electric. As you can see, as you would think, since electric is nothing else but electric, the bulk, 95% of your expenditures are forwarded through the electric utility, doing some of the things we talked about, as well as just maintaining the electric as it exists today. 2% of that is debt service, so a very small amount of debt in your electric utility. This is one of the ways that we're able to keep your utility, your electric rates low, a lot lower than some of our adjoining city partners. This is currently, as of June, by the end of the month, all the debt that the city has in all three funds. Your top is your general fund, your water and sewer fund follows that, and as you can see, there's not a whole lot of debt in your electric fund. This Wells Fargo account right here is for the Crossroads project, one of the loans for that. That's the one that falls off next November, this coming November, a year from then. That's about $170,000 a year. The rest of them will be there for a while. So not a lot of debt as things go. That's the end of this presentation. Be more than happy to try to answer any questions from the council or from the but again, this is a public hearing.
Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak, have any questions or comments on the budget? If so, if you will please come to the front.
Andy, I'd just like to ask one question.
You're allowed.
You said $750,000 for a sewer line on Georgia Stevens Boulevard. Isn't that a limited access highway for that?
It's a water line, not a sewer line. It's a 16-inch water line that's going to run water over to West Smithfield and increase our pressures and our capacity in West Smithfield.
Because I thought there could be no connections on that road, is there? Water connections on that. That's a limited access highway.
No, there's no problem with it.
Point, I think though, that the water line is actually run across where the bridge is at.
Yeah.
It's not run down that, so it's only run across the bridge. There's obviously nobody will need access across the bridge. So it really runs across the bridge up, am I correct?
It's actually under the bridge.
Yeah, but it's across the river, correct? Yeah.
The portion of this actually this will be done in phases. The phase that this $750,000 is paying for is actually from West Smithfield to about where the bridge is. Doesn't get us across the bridge. That'll be the next phase of this project.
So from Wilson Mills Road to the bridge?
From US 70.
Oh, okay. Okay, so it is down the
all the way
right.
around. Okay.
Okay.
And there are no connections.
Any other comments in the audience?
On is the allocation of $320,000, and just based on the survey that we had and mileage of streets that we have and how far behind we are on repairs, we would address that. What the plans are as far as how we're gonna spend that money.
Sure. Thank you for bringing that up. Last year, we hired a separate company to ask all of you, the citizens, what the priorities should be and how we're doing as far as providing services to you. One of the things, and one of the very few things that came up that was asked for was better roads, better road repairs, and that was a high priority for our citizens. So one of the things we did this current year is went out and hired a company to provide us with a survey of all the streets in town and to evaluate and order and create an order of which those need to be repaired, so that we're not getting in a situation where we're fixing a road that necessarily doesn't need to be repaired this year, may need to be repaired 3 years from now, spending money sooner than we have to. And then we have another road totally fall apart, and it costs us more money to fix that road than it would have had we just fixed it earlier. So the plan is to use that study and to fix these roads in the order that they're from worst to best, and get as much of that done for the money that we have allocated, which is $550,000 in this budget, as we can. So how far that goes, I can't actually say, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, but we're going to take it as very far as we can.
Any other questions?
I made a comment about one of the taxes that we did not do. I think it's important to let people know that not only do we not go up on 57 cents from our tax rate, but we also chose to pass on a tax that we could have charged you for your cars that other cities in our county is doing. And we chose to pass on it, especially at this particular point in time, and take that money, instead of using that money to build our roads, but to take some of our money that we have and put it in there. That's where the $320,000 came out of. So the point is, you know, that I think that the town council and the staff here has worked diligently on this budget to try to keep costs down by providing additional resources to our people. And I think sometimes, you know, we don't toot our own horn about things that we're not doing too. And so I think that's an important factor, that when you have other cities charging up to $30 a car and we're not charging anything, I think that says a lot. And we had an opportunity, but we're not going to do it at this point.
Yes, sir.
I got another question. Back to Parks and Recreation, how much of that Parks and Recreation is aquatic center losing a year for the town of Smithfield? How much is it costing us a year?
If you're not looking at the debt service on the building, the Aquatic Center is a service, just like any other service up there, and it's costing us about $170,000 to operate.
Is that, we're losing $170,000 a year on it, is that what you're saying?
If we don't use it, if we don't look at what we owe on the building. If you add that in, it's more than that.
And that's how much on the building?
How much do we owe on it?
Yes, sir.
I can't tell you off the top of my head how
Just
much
give
is
me a
the
rough
loan.
estimate.
I can tell you our payments annually are about $500,000
We're paying $500,000
a year.
Yes, ma'am.
I stay on East Street, my name is Maxine Hunter, and we have a lot of flooding over there every time it rains. And, I got pictures that, water go all over my driveway. And, they come down and work on it, and every time it rains, I wonder if anything can be done, where that water going,
Yeah, and we all want to know those answers too, Ms. Hunter. I appreciate you bringing that up. One of the things we're doing in this current budget that we're carrying over into next year, it's not a next year item, because we're actually doing it now as a stormwater study citywide. So Stephen Wentzman, who was up here earlier, he'll get your information before you leave here. But we have hired a company to look at all the stormwater issues, so we can get an understanding of what we need to be doing to fix what we can fix, and figure out what we can't fix and what we have to live with, and if there's anything we can minimize. You know, water's always gonna run where gravity takes it. So it's our job to try to figure out with these stormwater ponds and different things. One of the things that I know the planning department is doing right now is they're holding people accountable for these stormwater ponds, making sure that they're up to speed and up to code so that they're collecting and they're using and they're dispersing water the way that they're supposed to. So it would be very important for you to be able to be in connection with our stormwater team right now while they're looking at these issues so that we can see what, if anything, we can do over there. Stephen Wentzman, he's right. He was here earlier before me. Yeah.
Got you.
Anyone else? Yes, sir.
Is this the citizens' comment portion?
No, sir. No, sir. That's next. Yes, ma'am.
I live on 8 years back and forth from Birch Street, from Pine Acres.
Yes, ma'am. I know Pine Acres is one of the spots that we already told our stormwater people we wanted to single out, make sure we had a good review of that area, but we'll make sure we add that.
Anyone else? Motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
Second, all in favor, say aye.
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 All right. I have a motion to adopt the budget.
I make a motion, adopt the budget.
Second.
Second. Aye.
Aye.
Also, as part of that, gentlemen, fee schedule as well. Can I get a motion to approve the fee schedule?
I move we do fee schedule too.
Second.
Second to approve the fee schedule. All in favor? Thank you. All right. Now we will move on to citizens' comments. At this time, if there's anyone wishing to speak, you will please come forward and state your name and address for the record.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Matthew Clancy. Is that loud? Right, I'll back off the microphone. Sorry. I have difficulty hearing, so sometimes I'm a little loud. 320 Dogwood Street, Smithfield. I noticed when I was signing in that it says that I'm allotted 3 minutes to speak. I just want to preface this by saying that I had to retire as a paramedic due to a traumatic brain injury, and I have PTSD, so just bear with me as I sometimes have difficulties expressing myself in an effective fashion, but I'll try to do my best. Some of you may remember me from the last time that I was here asking for some relief from the town due to traffic on the U-turn coming off the outlets, as well as trespassers trespassing on our property. The problem, as I see it, is that the people to our immediate right, if you're looking out at the street from our home, they have a long PVC fence that goes quite a ways down, and it stops right in my next door neighbor's yard. Then on the other side of us, there's a lady that everybody in town knows, Ms. Molly Watson. She's got a chain link fence with barbed wire on top that, as she expressed to me, that the hospital in town provided for her as a means of security, because she used to be an ER nurse at the hospital and she had security concerns, so the hospital provided that for her. I guess the point that I'm getting at is that I know since the last time that I spoke, some research has been done into extending the existing fence, and the town has become aware that due to an easement issue with the current owner of the vacant commercial property, which borders our property, that a fence extension is not a viable option, and it's not going to be one. So, having discovered that, I took the liberty of looking into some other options to provide some relief for sound buffering as well as privacy, and to hopefully eliminate people trespassing through our property, which my wife works from home. She works remotely. I have seen a number of people come through our property. One fellow in particular, I was sitting in the kitchen having coffee one morning, looking out the window, and I see a guy walk by, and we're looking right at each other, I mean, clear as day. He looked at me and waved. And I was in shock, and I was questioning my sanity, saying, did I really just see what I think I saw? A guy coming through my yard waving at me. I was like, this can't be happening, right? But it did. When we bought this house last July, the foliage was pretty much the same as it is right now, so the buffer between our property and the U-turn was full, and it really masked a lot of what is there in the fall and the winter, which is completely barren, and we're wide open because the cut through is directly facing our house. So every time a car comes there, their headlight is directly coming into our kitchen and our dining room, as well as our upstairs bedrooms. It's pretty intrusive. And we feel that, we don't want to take away anything from our neighbors. We're happy for them that they're enjoying some privacy and some sound relief, and confident that they don't have an issue with trespassing like we do, because there is a fence there. But we as taxpayers would like to enjoy that same thing. And I'd like to be able to leave my home and go to Carly's C's or Food Lion or Walmart, not be fearful that I'm leaving my wife home alone with strangers coming through our property. So I started looking at landscaping as an option. I come to find out that the majority of the fellows from town were not aware what a formal proposal is, and they weren't familiar with what terms are. And when I tried to explain it, they still weren't, they were like, I gotta wait for my money. I was like, you probably will have to wait for your money. I mean, that's the way it's done in municipalities. You don't get cash on the barrelhead. I found a guy in Clayton that was familiar with both, and he provided me with an estimate on what he thinks will be a real solution to the problem, and I brought that with me this evening. I'd just like to say, too, before I forget, because I wander sometimes, but Mr. Scott has been very instrumental in helping me navigate through this process, for which my wife Renee and I are very grateful, because we didn't know how to navigate through this, and we would have spent a lot of time trying to figure it out had it not been for Mr. Scott, and we're very appreciative of that. Thank you, Mr. Scott. So this proposal that I have from this gentleman from Clayton outlines what his plan is to provide some sound relief, some privacy, and to eliminate the trespassing by planting some high shrubs as well as some thorny bushes that will discourage trespassers. But he said, I think his words were, believe me, if they walk through there once, they won't ever do it again. I said, well, that sounds good to me, right? So the lay of the land is, I mean, our house is smack dab in the middle of this thing, and you might as well have a big old sign like the one they have at Golden Corral with a flashing arrow pointing at our house saying, here's the shortcut right here, but look no further. One gentleman that I spoke to from the town, his name escapes me at this time, but he mentioned to me, well, why don't you put up a fence? Well, I don't have any income at the time. I'm scheduled to go to court soon for my disability to find out if I'm gonna get any relief. So my wife has been floating the whole boat in our home. We're making ends meet, but we don't have money for a fence. And even if we did, we would have to knock down quite a bit of foliage and trees just to get to our property line, which we don't have that money either. We just replaced our front door. We went with an entry-level door because the existing door, it wasn't an aesthetic issue, it was a security issue because it had a full panel of leaded glass in it that if you pushed your hand up against it, you'd go right through it. So I had to address that issue for security reasons. I come to find out that you could spend upwards of $10,000–$15,000 for a beautiful ornate front door. We went with about 10%. I'm confident that's gonna do the job for us. So what I'm driving at is that, you know, when we bought this house, we had no way of knowing that these things were an issue. And I'm confident that when the town of Smithfield and the developers put up the outlets, that they had no way of knowing either. So I'm not casting aspersions on anyone. I'm merely trying to solve a problem, and we're asking for your help to accomplish that because we don't have the funds to do it on our own. The gentleman from Clayton assures me that it's going to take $5,000 to correct the problem. And I don't sleep a wink at night. And I worry all the time when I leave the house about my wife's safety. And I had to give up my career of choice as a paramedic in service of others. And you know, I'm asking for a hand now, you know, because I really need it. You know, it's not because I don't want to dig into my pocket. There's nothing to dig out. It just ain't there. So if the town could find it in its heart to help us with this problem, we would be very appreciative. And in closing, I'd just like to add that, you know, I grew up very active in martial arts, and one of the things that I had drilled into my head was that confrontation, avoid it at all costs. Always avoid confrontation. Only as a last resort do you confront. I keep this in mind every time I see somebody walking through my property. I really do. And I got a concealed carry, and that was expressed to me there as well when I received that. I don't want to confront a stranger in my property because I don't know if the outcome is going to be favorable or not. I know there's a high likelihood it won't be. So if the town could find it in its heart to help us address this problem, we would sure appreciate it. And I'd like to thank all of you for what you do, and thank you for your time. Thank you, and good evening.
Thank you, Mr. Clancy. Do you want to leave that, or do you have a copy?
Actually, I got
email?
that.
Okay, all right. Okay. Thank you very much. All right, anyone else wishing to speak? Yes, sir.
My name is Richard Scott. I live at 117 Leah Drive in Clayton, North Carolina. I come here to address a sad issue. On May 19th, we had a tournament that was going on at the Sirac, and we had an issue with an official and a spectator, which turned out to be a parent. And never seen that before. I've officiated Division I men basketball for 20 years. And I've never seen what I saw or what I heard happen at the tournament. We had an issue with the referee who was having rabbit ears, heard somebody say something, he confronted the parent, he turned around and walked away, the parent left the bleachers and followed him on the floor. Bumped the official called the police, and the police came here, filed charges. One, we've ran tournaments for a number of years here. We've never had an issue. and I want to apologize for anything that did happen that day. Unfortunately, I was at another gym at another location, thinking that everything was fine because I had to make sure that another floor was going. And that happened at about 8:15. We started about 8:30, 8:45, I got a call. It happened that fast. But I want to say this. I want to make sure that you understand the people of Smithfield, and really here in Johnson County, because we hold a lot of tournaments. And we have a girls program called Carolina Lynx. We are a girls-only basketball program. We field about 5 teams. Majority of our girls, especially our older girls, are tracked out to be top Division I prospects. We provide a lot of mentorship. We provide a lot of SAT prep, EOC, EOG prep, and we also provide them with recruiting opportunities so that they can go to the next level. And that's very important to us because first they want to be student athletes. Student first, athlete second. Unfortunately, at the Division I level, that's not the case. But I won't go into all of that. That's not here to discuss today because that is another story for another time. But what I want to say here today is that the responsibility falls on us, falls on me. I'm the director, I'm the president, and everything falls on me. So first I want to apologize, but I can tell you right now that's an isolated incident. Again, I refereed 20 years, traveled all over the country. I've never, ever, ever had an incident like that. Never. So that is an isolated incident. We're going to work very hard to make sure that doesn't happen again. And we hope that you welcome us back to hold more tournaments because the deal is that, unfortunately, y'all not getting the sales tax. I didn't know that. I'm sorry about that because what the whole deal was is to come here and raise tournaments so that people stayed in hotels, used your restaurants, and did all those things, but we're still going to do that. I hate that y'all not getting the money, though. That's not good. But anyway, again, I appreciate everything. We love what we do. We love the kids. And if it wasn't for the kids, we wouldn't be in business. But thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Anyone else wishing to speak?
Mr. Mayor, before we move on, actually my daughter, the 4th grader, she's a member of the Carolina Lynx. I was there that morning, actually Mr. Scott and I, we was at Triple S that morning when he got the call or whatever. Just so everybody knows, it wasn't the Lynx program, it wasn't even their team that was playing. That's why he felt that he needed to come out here tonight and share with, as I told him, it wasn't even the Lynx team, it was a team from Fayetteville, and there's another team that was actually playing that night. But it is a wonderful organization. 4th grade all the way up to high school, and they do a lot besides basketball. So I just wanted to add that to what he said because my daughter is a part of it. So.
All right. This time we will move on to the consent agenda. We have a motion to approve the consent agenda as amended.
I'll make a motion.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. We'll move on to business items. First business item this evening is consideration and approval to update the potable water construction standards. Ed, turn that over to you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen, for letting me come and speak to you this evening. The purpose of this presentation is to ask council to accept the Utilities Department request for an update to the engineering standards for potable water. The two big questions we ask when we ask for such a thing is why are we making this change, and then what exactly are we changing? So let's look at why the changes were made. The simple and obvious reason to make the change is to modernize and update the existing drawings and standards. The existing drawings can be found on the town website and are dated as approved the year 2000. Since that time, construction techniques have modernized and certain materials have fallen out of favor.
Our current standards do not reflect these changes. Also, in April, the council approved the update to the sanitary sewer standards. This update would bring potable water standards in line with those current sewer standards. So what is the town staff actually proposing? We have updated the text to reflect modern methods and materials. For example, the existing text lists asbestos cement pipe as acceptable water main material. Experience has noted that asbestos cement is not a good choice for mainline material due to the carcinogenic effects of asbestos when moved. Also, the text refers to NCDEHNR, which was reorganized into NCDENR in 1997, and then in 2013 has been replaced by NCDEQ. Secondly, the Utilities Department has redrawn the standard details for clarity. The text and drawing within the text within those drawings were also updated. Lastly, as I mentioned, certain standards were revised in the early 2000s. These standards were updated and revised acceptable testing pressures, the inclusion of valves on all fire hydrants, and the practice of using other restraining methods besides rotting, which is not reflected in our current standards. So in summary, we're looking to update the utility standards because we feel they're warranted. The actual, what has been drawn and written has been modified to reflect current practices, and the updated standards will take effect upon council approval. If you gentlemen have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Questions said, or we will have a motion? You're not asking for any money.
No money involved.
All right. That make it easier.
Oh, you need a motion?
Yes, sir.
I'll make a motion.
Second. Motion and a second.
To approve.
To approve it?
Yes, I'll make a motion.
Thank
to
you.
approve.
All
I
right.
thought he said he gonna
That
make a
motion and a
motion.
second to approve. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, moving on to the next one. Item 2, consideration and approval to enter into a contract with the Wooten Company for design consulting services for the expansion of the water plant. Ed?
Good evening, gentlemen. Thank you for letting me come and talk to you this evening. The purpose of this presentation is to ask the council to approve the Utilities Department recommendation to award the design contract for the water plant expansion to the Wooten Company of Raleigh, North Carolina. Tonight, I'd like to go over how the firm was selected, where we ended up in the process of the contract, and refresh everybody about the project timeline. On January 25th, the call for the design firm was publicly advertised. Additionally, I sent an email to 4 firms that were invited to bid directly. These 4 firms are firms that the town has dealt with in the past and knew we had appropriate experience, expertise, and potentially could be a designer for this project. A pre-proposal meeting was held in February at the water plant to allow any interested firms to ask questions and get a better feel for what the expansion would actually entail. We received proposals on the 22nd of February, and then once they're received, all proposals that were received were evaluated by a team of 3, which included the utilities director, the water plant superintendent, and our town engineer. The 3-person panel recommended the Wooten Company as the designer of choice. Some factors for making the choice: the Wooten Company's depth of history with the town. The Wooten Company also has an experience assisting other towns with similar type expansions, and they have staff with appropriate technical expertise to help us along in the process. Once town staff informed the Wooten Company that they were the recommended firm, we began contract negotiations. After some back and forth, we have arrived at an agreeable contract, which was approved both by the town attorney and Wooten Company legal department. The town will receive design assistance, bidding assistance, contract administration, and construction observation for the full term of the construction project. We haggled a bit on price, but settled on terms that matched the preliminary cost estimate, which was presented previously to council. As a reminder, this was the cost estimate presented to council, and this is the section related to design administration and observation that was covered by this contract. Once approved by council, we begin in earnest. The loan term states that we must have the engineer's report submitted to the state by July 2nd of this year. Also, design plans will commence due to the time the state takes to review plans and then the subsequent time it takes us to make revisions to those plans. This process, we'd like to start this process as soon as possible. Our project goal is to have all approvals and permits in hand by the end of the calendar year. That's 2018, this calendar year. This is a quick look at the consultant's projected timeline. If you recall, the actual dates would have shifted a couple of months because this was projected to start back in April. But the actual block of time, the 28 months it takes, start to finish, will remain close to the same. So in summary, the design firm, the need for a design firm was publicly advertised. The Wooten Company was chosen as the best qualified firm. The contract does meet expectations, and the project would basically get kicked off tonight upon your approval. If you have any questions about the plant, I know the Wooten Company is here also, so I'd be happy to answer them, or you could ask them any questions you would like to.
Questions? Yeah.
I move we approve a motion to award the contract to the Wooten Company for the design of the town of Smithfield Water Treatment Plant Expansion Project and to authorize the town manager to execute the contract which is not to exceed 1.37 thousand, whatever, as listed in the book.
Have a motion to approve.
Second.
Second.
Aye.
Okay, Ted, you still up?
Yes, sir.
Move on to business item number 3. You're welcome. Go ahead. Let's go.
Thank you. I wrote it down. The purpose of this presentation is to ask the council to approve the Utilities Department request to undertake a financial analysis to determine the maximum fees the town may charge a developer when the developer proposes a new construction project. So really, what are system development fees? Why should we implement these fees? And how do we start this process? Simply put, the system development fees are fees that are assessed to new development to help offset the cost of capital improvements necessary to serve these new developments. For example, a new subdivision or industry may trigger an increased need for treatment capacity at the plant, or they may need a new water line or a bigger water line, or maybe they need to add an elevated storage tank, or maybe we need to make improvements to our sanitary collection system. System development fees are charged to the new development, usually in a per unit or per gallon fashion. These fees are one-time fees assessed and paid at either plat recordation or plan approval. They are normally passed along to the new customers included in the price of a new home if it's a subdivision, or commodity if it's new business. So why should the town, or why do municipalities assess these fees? These fees help offset the cost of capital improvements, which can be costly, especially if a municipality experiences tremendous growth in a short period. Even if we don't have to do the improvement project in the short term for any given development, it is certain that continued growth will lead to the need to make such improvements in the future. These fees are assessed to the new development only, thereby passing the cost of the capital, or a portion of the cost of the capital improvements, to the new customers, and sparing existing customers the bulk of the cost associated with new development. The fees will aid in lowering future rate hikes or possibly delaying the hikes altogether. So how do we start the process? Well, in response to the now famed court case of Quality Homes versus the town of Carthage, the North Carolina General Assembly has passed House Bill 436. This law defines what the fees are and how they can be assessed. The law requires that local governments which assess these fees be able to defend how they are determined. Prior to HB 436, most municipalities had no real basis. They likely assess fees based on their neighbor's fee level or various other factors without any economic backing. HB 436 ended that by requiring the fees to be derived by an economic analysis. HB 436 also requires this analysis to be performed by a person or company that is professional, licensed, and has appropriate experience in calculating or developing system development fees. Town staff has had discussions with EnviroLink, and we would recommend taking them to undertake this analysis. The analysis will show the maximum fee, or what the maximum fee actually could be. When all is said and done, we'll come back to council in the future and propose the implementation of system development fees at some given level. It will be council's decision at that time to set the fees at a level council deems appropriate and necessary. That level may be where the recommended level is, or it could be lower, or it could be higher, just as long as you don't exceed the analysis maximum level. Here's a look at what some of the local municipalities are currently doing. The caveat here is things are about to change. July 1st, 2018 is the date HB 436 set. What they're telling all the local governments who currently assess these fees is they have to have that backing and that economic analysis done. So these levels may or may not change, and they may go up a little bit and may go down a little bit. That's irrelevant to my request because I'm just want to undertake the economic analysis, but I'm just showing you this is what is already occurring in our local area. So in summary, system development fees are the one-time charges assessed to new development only. They're used to offset the capital improvements to allow the new development to pay for those extensions of service. And EnviroLink is the firm that we would like to perform the analysis to determine what that maximum fee level could be. So if you guys have any questions, I will like to answer them if I can.
Okay, thanks, sir. Any questions? Ted? And I have one question.
Yes, sir?
Was this bid?
No, because the level of the contract is, well, the proposed contract was $20,000, so there was no need to bid. We used it was a referral from our town engineer. He was familiar with this exact firm doing it in a different municipality, so they came and spoke to us.
So your need for a bid is based, no need for a bid is based
The level of the contract.
on, that based on?
There's no purchasing, you don't have to informally bid.
So I think we do have a
do?
policy in place. I think we need to check that.
I will be happy to bid it if that be the case.
I can't remember right off the top of my head what that is, but I want to say it's pretty close.
Okay.
It's bigger.
I'll check it.
I'm sure it's a formal policy, but it was something that was definitely presented and made as part of a motion with the council. But I just wanted to make sure we check that before.
Yes, sir.
There's no rush for this.
No, sir.
We may be fine, but I just want to make sure.
Okay.
Make a motion.
Motion to table for 30 days. Second, all in favor?
Thank you.
Move on to number 6, I believe it is. Consideration and approval, various fiscal year budget amendments.
Mayor, council, I bring before you a process that takes place every year-end. Budget amendments, year-end encumbrances of two types. Encumbrances with purchase orders already in place, and encumbrances without purchase orders. Shannon distributed to you, as indicated in the write-up, the purchase orders
encumbrance requests today. With that in mind, I'd like to alter that sheet that's listed as Exhibit A, encumbrances without purchase orders. The second line of that sheet description reads, ordinance codification. Page 63. 363. Thank you, Shannon. Is everyone with me? Page 363, the second line that reads ordinance codification. So that line is also repeated in your purchase order encumbrances. So we're going to strike that line. And then immediately the line under it, non-department economic development. As of today, what is remaining in that line is $6,200. And that brings the figure, total figure, down to $478,000 and a few cents, so to speak. I don't have that with me. I'm sorry, $478,106. I do have it. I want to remind council that each of the three attachments have to be approved separately. So if someone, if sees fit, would bring a motion to approve each of these independent. The final thing that I'll say is these numbers that are here will be the most that will be encumbered. We are attempting to do a couple things as in years past. We bring these budget amendments to you at the last council meeting as opposed to requesting a council meeting at the very end of June, which is what most cities do. So we've done hopefully a decent job at estimating what departments will spend and bringing these budget amendments and encumbrances before you at this time so that we won't have to meet later. You will see me before you again in September or October of the new budget year with the final numbers that will actually be encumbered. Again, it's hard to estimate what bills are actually out there that will come in, and so the figures that you see before you are the available balances as of the last financial report. It will not be the final numbers. The final numbers generally come in lower than the figures that you have before you. So what you're approving is the maximum the encumbrance will be. Any questions?
Questions? Director at this time? If not, I think you needed a motion to approve all
Right.
three attachments.
All
Is that
three.
correct?
So a motion to approve the budget amendments, year end for the 17-18, and then one for purchase encumbrances, and then purchase order encumbrances.
Make a motion to approve year-end budget amendments for 2017 and 18.
That does include all three.
Well, we have to do them separate, though.
Correct.
You want three notes?
Correct.
Okay, all right. Go ahead. So, got a motion?
Second.
Second. All in favor?
Make a motion to approve year-end budget and purchase encumbrances for 17 and 18.
Second.
Make a motion to approve year-end purchase order encumbrances for 17 and 18.
Thank you much.
Tom, come to council members' comments. Gentlemen?
Mayor, I have a couple comments I'd like to make. The first comment I'd like to make is, last session, we were asked to have a committee for downtown development, working with them about their bylaws and their ex officio. Councilman Ashley's absent tonight. He and I have discussed this, and actually need some more time to talk with some more folks, including downtown development people. But there's a work in progress, and his concern was to get through the budget process before we brought more stuff to the council, but that is ongoing. So I just want to make sure to update the council and the citizens on that.
Anything else?
I got a couple, Mr. Mayor. First of all, just two issues that have been brought up, the improvement organization. I know, at one of the meetings, actually, our town manager was there, Old Goldsboro Street, Edna, the section of road, Edna Street, there wasn't a sign, that was there, but it's a sign there now. But one of the biggest issues or dangers that we possibly face is, it's a steep ditch right there. And right now, pretty much the grass needs to be cut because, as narrow as that road is, if someone had to have to swerve off, they're gonna go down. It's real deep, and it's definitely a danger hazard. But the grass has grown up so high that, it's a hazard. Right there, you understand what I'm saying?
Yes, sir, I know exactly what you're talking
I
about.
think it just needs cutting or
Yep.
whatever, or possibly some kind of barrier or something put there. If not, that's gonna be a dangerous situation. Of course, a few residents mentioned tonight, just with some of the flooding. I was looking over the manager's report, and I guess I need to kind of wait for him to kind of explain the stream clean grant. But I know some of the flooding coming out of East Smithfield, starting right there at Smith College Park. I just really think that about time spring grant. Just digging through spring grants just in case, something is dammed up, whatever, because it's definitely flooding. It's showing a lot of flooding, but I would love to see, what would happen, or if we did a little just maintenance, preventative maintenance from Smith College Park all the way to spring grants, which leads to the river or whatever. I know today there was a big police raid or whatever. I got another phone call today from a young lady down in Johnson Court. Pretty much was getting out of the shower this morning. Next thing you know, police was pretty much kicking down the door. The son was there, and there was guns drawn at her. Pretty much had just got out of the shower. Always two sides of the story, but I just think, there should be some kind of policies in place, especially, I wasn't there, just hearing what happened, guns drawn. I mean, that's a young lady and it's a son. I mean, 6 months ago, we was investigating another thing. And from what I heard today, it was a mistaken identity. The police had a picture of a young lady, but it wasn't her. They found out it wasn't her. Mine 6 months ago, what happened over here in Massey Street, guns drawn on the man, 2 little boys there, his father was elderly, and it's mistaken identity. We are in tough times already, and you just never know, especially when somebody haven't did anything, and they get guns drawn there, you never know how somebody gonna react, or what they're gonna do. Right now, we have a community police officer over at the Savoyard Community Center. I hope we can get some things in place, where we can see this officer riding down the street on a bicycle, but not just sitting in that building every day. That's not community police officers. Need to be out more, so you know who people are. And, I just, getting that phone call today, I mean, it's kind of very disturbing, but I wasn't there, I'm not making any accusations, but, you know, just hearing what happened, you know, this, you know, we in turbulent times. Lastly, I'll say, about 2 Sundays ago, you know, Smithfield was hit hard with tragedy. You know, it was a former town employee that was driving a church van. And, you know, this church is probably 2 blocks up the street, right here in the heart of downtown Smithfield. And, you know, it's definitely a turbulent time for, you know, this town, this county, pretty much the state. You know, and right now I'm embarrassed, you know, very shocked, very concerned. That, you know, there wasn't any kind of statement that was done, you know, from the town of Smithfield. Text went out about 2 days later, possibly saying that we should have did something. I intervened and just pretty much said that, you know, if you didn't do it, if you don't mean it, you don't do it. But, I mean, this was a tragedy. We had a former town employee, you know, a life was lost, but nothing was done from the town of Smithfield. You know, just sending out a statement, even if you meant it or if you didn't mean it. But, you know, I'm embarrassed about that. I'm most shocked by it, but here again, if you didn't mean it anyway, you wouldn't have did it, and we didn't do it. So I'm just speaking as a collective leadership from this town, from what happened, because I know during election time, most people gonna file in over that church, you know, but it's gotta be bigger than that. Last month, I talked about a team, you know, I mean, we talking about not losing a ball game, we lost a life, 2 lives was lost. So, that's all I have to say.
Anyone else?
I had an opportunity to go to the town hall dinner, I think it was a week ago, Wednesday night. Was it Wednesday night, last Wednesday night? Anyway.
Yes.
Anyway, it was, we had a great opportunity to meet some of our neighboring municipality leaders. Good opportunity, we have sat with all the people from Selma was there. So we were able to meet with them, and there was some good discussions. I think there's some, you know, based upon the group that they have now running the town, they definitely sounded positive towards, you know, willing to work with us, that there's some common things we can do, which is a good positive thing between our neighboring towns. So I think that was a positive thing. Also, one last thing is we are still working towards that newspaper. I want you to know it's not dead. We are still working towards it. It takes time to gather information, and if anybody has any suggestions, please let us know, because we still believe we need to be able to get out information in our town about what's going on in our town, good and bad, but mostly good that we have.
Anyone else?
Would like to just say, thank you again to the city manager, to Greg, and all the department heads, and as well as to this council. Many long hours, putting in for the budget this year. I think it's a good budget. We were able to accomplish a lot. We weren't able to accomplish everything that we wanted to accomplish, but I think we did a really good job of being able to provide the services, top quality services to our citizens at I think, the lowest cost possible. And we were able to, I know I've served up here long enough to be able to have the unfortunate opportunity to sit across from the department heads in these meetings and say, no, because we certainly could not afford it at that time. It was just the time that we were going through all across the state, North Carolina, and it was serious. But we did have some excess funds this year, and the last few years, and the council saw fit to provide a few things that we weren't able to do in the past. So, say thank you to this council and to the citizens that are not only in this room, but the citizens that will view this hopefully in a week or so online or on television. I just want you to know that we have a good group of council members up here, good staff, town staff, city manager, clerk, an attorney as well, that's looking after and being stewards for your taxpayers' money. I just want to say that enjoy working with this council. My job as mayor a lot easier to know that I've got a team like this. And team very much. I did want to say one other thing, as far as what your town does for you. A lot of times you don't know the impact that the town has, and I didn't even know about it actually until I saw it on social media. But just a small example of, I don't know when it was, a couple weeks ago, we had someone that was at the hospice house, pretty coming close to near the end of their life, and one of the last wishes was, I think, to travel around Smithfield and Urban. And I think members of our fire department made that possible. And those are just things that you just don't even know about. It's not part of the job description, but it's what our county employees do, just from their heart. And John, to you and your staff, I want to say thank you for that as well. But thanks everyone for the budget. Anything else? If not, I'll turn it over to the manager.
If it pleases the mayor and the council, I'm going to ask Bill Drexler to step up here for just a minute and give you a short 2-minute presentation on what we've been doing with the stream restoration grant that Councilman Lee asked about and how that's actually taken place. This was a grant that we received, it's $150,000 for stream clean out. It's no taxpayer money from Smithfield going into this. It's a really good thing, allowing us to keep our streams clean so that stormwater flows and doesn't back up in some of our blue line streams. So if you could touch on that, I would appreciate it.
Yes, sir, Mayor, Councilman. The stream debris removal was a grant from Soil and Water Conservation. 3 key streams, Spring Branch, Meadowbrook, and Buffalo Creek. We bid the project, awarded to the low bidder, Blackman Group. They have completed all 3 streams. I personally walked Spring Branch, all of Buffalo Creek, and all of Meadowbrook after it was completed. I mean, basically you pay somebody to go in there and clean the streams out. Unfortunately, the only way to know they've done the job is to walk it behind them. And they did an excellent job. Good cooperation from the majority of the property owners. So that is complete, all three major streams. We didn't, the low bid was significantly lower than the grant award. So we have asked for 2 additional locations, and those were recently approved. I guess I brought the paperwork today. That includes section out by, off of 301 by the warehouses, from Walpat Road all the way up to 301, and then probably about 1,500 feet beyond 301, and then a section over in the Spring Branch area also about another 1,500 feet on a tributary. So I actually, the contractor that worked with that, he's going to be picking up the maps of those locations tomorrow and providing us with the cost for those additional stream locations. So I'm very positive. As I said, when I walked all 3 of the major streams that have been done, Spring Branch, Buffalo Creek, and Meadowbrook, you could see the impact of the flows.
Did we not have some idea of the amount of debris that was pulled out of those streams and hauled away? Wasn't there a, seemed to me like there was a...
It was significant.
Yeah.
It was very significant. Not just, I mean, it was significant in terms of the leaf and limb debris that was taken out, but also trash.
Thanks, Bill.
And it was, I might say that work was, it was all handwork. And that's really the only way to go into those streams. You can't get trucks in there. So these crews walked the streams, chainsaws where they needed to get the debris out, and then had to work with property owners along the way for access points to pull it out. But they did an excellent job.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
I only have a couple things, Mr. Mayor, and we can move along. I wanted to remind everyone that we have the Three Little Pigs Triathlon scheduled for June 16th. It starts and ends near the Shrek. It's a great event for the town, co-sponsored by Johnson County Rotary. Anybody who likes to see that type of thing would really get a lot of enjoyment out of going and watching that event. It's a great event, growing every year, and Smithfield's somewhat on the map as a result of it by a lot of these participants. I'd also mention that our shark swim team that just recently started again this year actually reached 100 members this year. That's a huge number of kids involved in swimming here at the Shrek. So I know that we were asked a little while ago about some of the cost with the Shrek, but that is just really beneficial to those kids participating in this swim team, something they'd never have otherwise. I'll mention the sinkhole since it was mentioned. It's in your report. We're not sure yet if that was created by a water line or a sewer line, but it is DOT's road, and we don't believe we're going to encumber any expense involved in that repair. About a 6-foot deep hole, maybe 4 foot, 5 foot wide, but certainly not from stormwater, as either sewer water or potable water that was leaking underneath there that created that. They're probably still out there working on it, I assume. Last thing, we are looking and evaluating a build grant. This is a grant that was actually brought to us by Councilman Ashley with the possibility of some major road repairs. The minimum amount of this grant that we can apply for is $1 million. We had to look for something that maybe we could use for $1 million. And one of the things that stuck out after the budget process was Equity Drive. So we are looking at possibly applying for a build grant to help us with Equity Drive. Some of those expenses of rebuilding that road, adding sidewalks, lighting, all the things that we talked about. So I'll keep the council informed as we move forward with that grant. And that is all I have, Mr.
One more quick thing, Mayor, just probably clerical, but under these grass violations, letters sent out, most of the letters are saying June 30th, 18, I don't know if it's April or May, it should have been, but it's got 6/30, 18. I think the date is good. I don't know if it's,
I guess I'm not sure where you're at.
grass
Grass
violations.
mail, that's the first page. Second page.
Yeah, I think the intent of that wasn't sent. It's when they have to be in compliance by that date. So I'll make that correction. Thank you.
I have a question about the L2 valves. It says here that the parks were, can you update us on that? For the water tanks?
Yeah, the surge repression parts of the altitude valves came in actually yesterday, or Friday rather. They arrived at the water plant. Clay Val was on site today installing them. We plan on testing them later this week once we have SCADA hooked in, or SCADA, the communication, to make sure everything's doing what needs to be done. In addition to that, we're going to put pressure gauges on various hydrants in the town to see in the susceptible areas to make sure we don't have an issue there. But it's ready to be, assuming they finish today, and I didn't get a follow-up, but it would be ready to be tested by the end of this week.
So did they determine they were faulty? Is that what it was?
We have not determined anything at this point. The direction was to get the valves working, and then we'll go back and put the gloves on and fight what we need to fight.
Okay.
All right. Nothing else we need to go in closed session.
I would make a motion, we
go into closed session, so North Carolina General Statute 143-318.11A3.
Motion, second, all in favor?
Aye.
Go into closed session at